Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. So I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years. I would say that they're probably best known for their big kind of cakey Imperial stouts. They do some really nice big kind of fruity juicy sours as well in my experience, but in recent times they've been doing a few more kind of straight shooting beers, which I think they've done really well as well. So yeah, it's another one of those we're going to have a look at today. So hopefully it's as good as the last one we had. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Stockholm once again, the Swedish capital, to Sundbyberg in the northwest to be specific, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Omnipollo. So this particular beer is called the Eliphas. It comes in at 8.1% ABV, and this one is a double IPA, and I'm guessing from the fact that it says it's got corn and wheat in it, it's most likely to be a New England double IPA. So yeah, very, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. This is one of the first two beers that Omnipollo have released from their new brewery in Sundbyberg through Systembolaget here in Sweden, and incidentally this beer was released as part of the Lokal och Småskalig assortment for August of 2021. It was released along with the Trismegistus, which I reviewed for you a few videos back. That was a 10.2% triple IPA. So yeah, definitely curious to see what its little brother has in store for us, but hopefully it's as good as the other one was. So let's crack on with this review and see how we go. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Omnipollo before, and we will no doubt return to that and add more to that in the near future, I should say. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Omnipollo once again then, on to my brewery notes. So Omnipollo, as I've mentioned to before, was founded back in 2011 by Henrik Fenty, who was a long-time homebrewer, and Carl Grandin, who was a clothing designer. So the two had been friends for quite a while, and then one day they decided to start a brewery together after having discussed at length how insular the craft beer scene was in Sweden and abroad. But they decided that they wanted to reinvigorate it both from a stylistic and from a gastronomic sense, and they felt that the partnership between a clothing designer and a homebrewer was very logical to do this, and this kind of reflects the route that they've gone with their beers, adding all these different adjuncts and flavour essences and things into them. But the name Omnipollo is derived from omnipotent chicken, so Omnipollo, pollo Spanish for chicken, but these guys were gypsy brewers until 2020. But they also opened up the Omnipollo's hat in Stockholm as a collaboration with Pizza Hut. I forget exactly when this was open, but it's become quite popular in the city, and it's got many of the Omnipollo beers on tap, as well as having some very, very nice pizza. But in 2019, they also opened up a bar in Hamburg in Germany, and then another one in Gothenburg as well. And they've recently, I think it was actually in 2020, they opened up another bar in Tokyo in Japan, which I do hope I can visit at some point in the future. I really want to get out there and have a look at that. But in March of 2020, they announced that they would open their own brewery in Sundbyberg in a former church, which had previously been home to Sundbyberg Skogsbryggeri. But when they moved in there, the brewing capacity was around 100,000 litres per year, but they've upgraded that to be around 600,000 litres of beer per year. And as you can see, as of August 2021, they started releasing some beers from this brewery in the cans. But as of August 2021, when we're filming this review, they've produced around 380 different kinds of beer, and as I mentioned to you earlier, this brewery are probably best known for their big kind of cakey Imperial stouts, for the kind of, should we say, the you know, the Goza series that they do, the Mango Lassi Gozas and all of these kind of things, the big fruity juicy Gozas, and some of their classic beers. Some of my favourite ones that we had from them would be Nebuchadnezzar, which is the West Coast Double IPA. That's an awesome beer. Also the Fata Morgana, which is one of the really old school New England IPAs. Also some of the Imperial stouts, you know, the Noah and the Yellow Belly, if you can get them, are very, very nice. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Omnipollo for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is your history of Omnipollo. Now let's get on and have a look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. There you can see, very nicely presented once again, but obviously it's one of these kind of transparent ones that are shiny ones that the camera hates, but I'm just going to leave the water condensation on it for just now. But there you can see all the different kind of signs and stuff there, the yin yang and all of this, so I do think it's pretty cool. And then Eliphas on the other side. But yeah, 8.1% New England IPA, this one, 440 millilitres. I think I paid about 55 or 60 Swedish kronor for this one, so a little bit more expensive than some of the other ones, but you know, the Omnipollo beers have always been a little bit pricier. So yeah, but you would pay more for this if you bought it abroad, actually. That's the one thing. Systembolaget does keep the prices of the beers down. But yeah, 440 millilitre can, this one, 60 Swedish kronor translates to about €6, about £5.25 sterling, something like that, and I guess maybe in the region of about $7. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the taste, and then I'm very curious to see what this has in store for us. Let's do it. Not a lot of head on this one, incidentally, but yeah, I think that'll do for the moment, and then we'll put the rest of it in just before we taste the beer. But I think that's lined up fairly nicely. So yeah, anyway, just surprised that this beer has absolutely no head to it. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this one has poured a lovely, very kind of bright mango juice yellow colour. No head on it at all, which I'm very, very surprised at. I don't know why that is. But yeah, in terms of the colour of your beer, then remember the colour is dependent on 1, the type of malt that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts that you put in and any barrel aging that you do will also affect the colour, but you don't really have to care about that so much, or so often I should say, with New England IPAs. It's not often that you put adjuncts in these and barrel age them, though that usually is reserved for different kinds of sour beer, of course. But yeah, as I say, a bit of a mango juice colour. I always like comparing these beers to the different fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. But yeah, certainly one of the more kind of rich yellow colour ones that I've been leaning that I've seen in recent times. A very rich kind of mango juice. But yeah, the level of haze on this one is kind of what you would expect for a New England double IPA, to be honest with you. You know, the haze in these beers is due to the oat and the wheat content, and also the yeast is going to play a role in that as well. But yeah, I do like how this one goes about its business. So yeah, very nice stuff, and pretty much what you would expect in terms of appearance for a New England double IPA. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one then and see how we go. Very curious about this. That does smell very nice. Yeah, where do we start with this one then? So, as I've told you in previous reviews of New England IPAs, in my opinion, there's 6 different directions these beers can go in. They can be sort of yeasty and farmhousey, they can be rye leaning and grainy, they can be wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can be kind of brown sugary. Usually these beers will display a few of those characteristics in the one go. It just, you know, varies from recipe to recipe, of course, as does the level of haze in these beers that you get. But yeah, this one has a little bit of everything, to be honest with you. Well, not the rye, I would say, but it does have a wee bit of quite a few of those things. So yeah, it smells to me like the backbone of this one. The backbone of this one is quite sort of chewy. I've got a feeling that this might turn out to be a little bit more of a kind of sweeter New England IPA, just from the aroma that it gives off. So you can certainly smell that nice kind of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose there. You can smell a little bit of the soft white bready character from the barley malt, but there's a lot of oaty creaminess in there, and within that oaty creaminess you can certainly smell a wee bit of a kind of Werther's Original brown sugary quality. Absolutely. But at 8.1%, this one, it's going to give you a wee bit of a boozy character, and usually the brown sugar is the thing that kind of masks the booze. And you can certainly get a little bit of that out of this beer, that's for sure. Yeah. So on that note, it's quite it's quite interesting to look at it from that perspective, that's for sure. But yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, is pretty damn nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me on the malty side of things. But it almost has a very slightly sickly sweetness to it. You can smell that, which I find quite interesting. But pardon me, just take a little bit of time to take that in. But yeah, fruity wise as well, that kind of mixes quite well. We'll come back to the fruit in a minute. But yeah, as I say, it's a very smooth malt base, this one. Wheaty bitiness, big kind of bready barley malt leaning backbone to it, but a lot of thick creamy oats, then quite a bit of an almost sickly sweet brown sugar. You do get a little hint of a yeasty note out of it as well. But let's focus on the hoppy and green component of the beer then. So on that hoppy side then, the green component in this one isn't actually too pungent. I would have expected a little bit more from it, to be honest, in that sense. You do get a little touch of earthiness out of it. Yeah, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of it. There is a nice little bit of floral aromaticity there, but I really feel that takes a back seat to the grassy side of things. It's got a big, wet, leafy, grassy element to it. So that's a really interesting point to make about this beer. A big, wet, leafy, grassy sort of thing. So yeah, that side of the beer is pretty interesting, I have to say. So yeah, big juicy wet leafy sort of thing in there, and I think, you know, in fairness, the wet leafy note is in keeping with the sort of fruity side that you get out of the beer. So yeah, very nice, very nice. But yeah, not the green component for me really takes a bit of a back seat, which I'm kind of surprised about. So we'll see how that plays out in the flavour, actually. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, I find this one to be quite balanced, but I think it leans a bit more towards the tropical side of things, and it's got quite a lot of soft tropical fruit. So I'm wondering about, you know, Idaho 7, or, you know, Victoria's Secret. El Dorado obviously could be another one. There's lots of hops it could be on the tropical side of things. It's not, you know, I used to love playing Guess the Hops with these beers, but now it's not worth it. Sometimes you can get it just like that, because, you know, but sometimes it's a bit more difficult, and with this beer I would say it is a little bit more difficult. But yeah, certainly the tropical fruity side of this one for me is very soft. I get a lot of mango out of this one. I get quite a lot of, you know, softer apricot-y and papaya notes in there. It's got a lot of that, but there is maybe, you know, there's a teeny bit of a slightly more pungent passion fruit or whatever. But yeah, it's quite hard to figure out exactly what hop it would be. I'm wondering, you know, there's a bit of kind of a tangerine-y, orangey sort of thing coming out of it, and I'm wondering if it's Sabro, because there is almost a little bit of that kind of coconutty thing in there, and Sabro's quite distinctive, and it's just, the more that I smell of it, I'm like, could it be Sabro? So yeah, there is a wee bit of an orangey note to this one, but very soft tropical fruit notes in behind it. So yeah, the way that the aroma goes together on this one for sure is pretty interesting. So yeah, I do like how this one goes about its business. I think we can safely say that. But yeah, no sediment on the bottom of the can in this either, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I think we can, let me just line this up again so that my OCD is happy. There we go. So yeah, awesome stuff. But yeah, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. But yeah, big, wet, grassy, leafy sort of thing. Some nice, smooth tropical fruits with a bit of orange in there. I do suspect a bit of Sabro in this. And yeah, interesting malt base. But let's get stuck into it. So yeah, the Eliphas 8.1% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Omnipollo in Sundbyberg, Stockholm, Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah. Okay. Seems that your first impression is it's a wee bit more of a raw IPA than what we've had from Omnipollo before, actually. yeah, this is interesting. This is quite different from the New Englands that we've had from them before. Yeah. Now, the malt base too, I'm going to say the malt base has a little bit of a kind of grainy, bitey sort of thing to it, which is kind of interesting. It's definitely not a sort of smooth or sweet malt base that you get out of this one. And this, the flavour that I'm getting out of this one, I've had this a few times, and I'm pretty sure it's something to do with the yeast that gives you this. And I don't know what chemical it actually is that gives you this particular flavour, but I'm getting a wee bit. It's almost like a kind of very dark, grainy type character out of this one. This is something that's kind of made me think about taking the sommelier classes. I think that could be something. It would be fun to do that. You've got to study a lot for it, right enough. But I think it could be interesting to train properly as a beer sommelier. Might add a few interesting perspectives to the channel, but at the same time it maybe takes away a bit of the originality, I don't know. But yeah, how do you say, the way that this goes together, it is quite nice. It's a very wet, sort of green grassy, leafy and juicy fruity New England IPA, but the malt base is certainly a bit different from what we've had from Omnipollo before, because normally you'd have a bit of bite to it, or you'd have a bit of smoothness and sort of sweetness and things. But yeah, it has got a little bit more of a kind of grainyish character to it, but there's not rye rogue listed on this thing, so yeah, might be something with the yeast. But yeah, let's try and break the flavour of this one down then and just see how we go. So, with this beer then, straight away across the middle of your palate, you can feel that nice sort of, you can feel that lovely kind of smooth white bready character with this one. You can feel that forms the backbone of the beer across the middle third and the back third of your palate, straight away. So, yeah, that's the backbone of the beer. If we focus on the middle third of your palate just now, on top of that sort of white bready layer, you can feel the sort of wheat just sitting on top of that, kind of thickening it out a wee bit, and the wheat gets a bit more bitey towards the back of the palate. But beyond that, we can focus on the middle third of your tongue. So what you'll notice is that in the aftertaste, the further into the aftertaste you go, you'll get a little bit more of a kind of grainy element sort of pushing its way out of it. But then on top of that, there's a nice big kind of oaty, creamy element to the beer. Yeah, so there is a nice big kind of oaty, creamy element there. And it's almost like you've got a big circle in the middle third of your palate actually, and this is interesting. So in the middle third of your palate, you get this big circle there. Although, in fairness, I think you've got this big sort of, you get this, I think the oats actually maybe a bit different. So if you go down the middle line of your palate, you can feel the oats just kind of sitting there. And as you go towards the back, almost like the border region with the back third of your palate, you can feel that's when you get that really dark kind of grainy character that I was talking about in this one. I wish I knew what that was that gives you that. But yeah, you can feel the oats kind of sit there in the middle of your palate. You can feel the oats kind of sit there in the sort of middle trench of your tongue, if you like. And they spread out towards the edge of the palate and just get a little bit lighter, but the oats go right down the middle line of the tongue. And they do give the beer that degree of creaminess that it has. But sitting on top of that, you get this kind of circle, and that's where you get that kind of Werther's Original sort of sweetness to the beer. And the brown sugar in this one is very sort of Werther's Original like, but if you go to the dead centre of your palate, it's got a really nice kind of sweet caramelly note right in the middle of the tongue, which I do like. So yeah, right in the dead centre of the palate, you've got that nice kind of sweet caramelly note. So yeah, I like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, awesome stuff. The brown sugary notes out of this I think are really nice, and like I say, this beer, it's got a bit of, I think overall as an IPA it leans towards that wheaty bitey end of the spectrum, but it has got a wee bit of a sweet edge to it as well. So that's an interesting point to make about this one. And it does feel quite fresh because you still get a bit of that hoppy dustiness as well, but again we'll come back to that a little bit later. But other than that, I don't think there's too much to say about the middle third of your palate on this one. Yeah, soft white bready layer, kind of thicker wheaty note there, the oaty notes sitting on top of it, then the sort of circle with the brown sugar, the sort of Werther's Original butter candy sort of thing on the outside, but then a sweeter caramel note as you move into the centre of it. But then yeah, let's focus on the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, there's a little bit of a kind of bready note in there. You get a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty quality. Then the base of that back third of your palate, you've got a more kind of floury, yeah, as I say, you get a little bit of that more kind of grainy bready character out of it. On top of that, again, you've got the wheat, but the wheat really has a big bitiness as you push towards the back third of your palate in this one. And I do feel, as I say, that this beer, the malty side of things, it really starts to lean towards being a more kind of wheaty and bitey New England double. But yeah, as we say, I think on top of that, you maybe get a little bit of the oatiness creeping in further forward on that back third of your palate. Then on top of all of that, you get a more airy, yeasty note out of the beer. So you get that more airy, bready kind of character sitting on top of it. So when you start from the back of your palate, you can feel the flavour's a bit taller, and as you push further forward, it just condenses down a little bit. Then as you go into the middle third of the palate, it gets a wee bit more, it just condenses down a little bit and it's a bit more squashed together. But this is what you often get from these beers. But yeah, I like how this goes together. So yeah, interesting. The malty side of things on this one is is pretty nicely done. So I think we can move on to the hoppy side of the beer then. So back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness in there, and as you move further forward, it does, become a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic, and you can feel that coming out more the further forward you go on the sides of the palate there. And you do get quite a bit of a hoppy dustiness out of this one, which is quite interesting. And usually I find this is something that you get quite often with dry hopping, and it can usually be, I think it means that this beer is pretty damn fresh actually. But yeah, you do get a little bit of that kind of dusty thing from the dry hopping actually. So yeah, it's got quite a bit of green character to it, this beer, but it's just weird that doesn't come out so much in the actual aroma, because I really wasn't getting much of a green component out of this one. It was coming across as quite wet and green and leafy in a sense. So yeah, interesting that you've got such a big floral character to this one in the flavour, and it takes a wee while to come out as well, right enough. But around the front curve of the palate, you do get that wet, grassy element. So yeah, I do like how that goes together for sure. But yeah, the green component for me is quite nice, and it mellows out more the further you go into the aftertaste as well. So the green component really takes a bit of time to show you what it's all about in this beer, but it really does work nicely, as I say. I like how it goes together. But yeah, I think we should focus on the fruity side of the beer on the front third of your palate then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up to this one, a wee bit of a bread crust. Then the base of that, as we say, the front third of your palate is a bit more sort of bready and bread crusty and things like that. So I do like how that goes together in this one. And then on top of that, of course, you've got that kind of nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So on the fruity side of things with this, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of, you certainly get a wee bit more of a kind of passion fruity element to it. So I like that with this one. I do like that kind of slightly passion fruity note out of the beer. But as you move further forward, it has a wee bit more of a, it mellows out a little bit more, and you start to get a juicier mango to it as well. And then you get the softer apricot-y kind of notes there. But I do find it's actually got a wee bit more pungency to it on that front third of your palate than I thought it was going to. So quite a bit of passion fruit, maybe even some grapefruit in there, which is interesting. Yeah, that's there. But yeah, you do get a soft mango out of it. The kind of apricots and the papaya notes I was talking about earlier are coming out. Then as you move into the kind of front half of that front third of your tongue, you certainly get a wee bit more. You certainly get a wee bit more kind of soft orangey notes out of this one, and I do get a wee bit of the coconut. So I do wonder, could there be a bit of Sabro in here? It's just something in the nose was making me think Sabro, and there's a few things in the flavour that are making me think too. The softness of the orange, and then also the wee bit of coconutty. It's almost got like a little bit of coconutty character to it, which I find quite interesting. But yeah, I do like how this beer goes about its business in that regard. So it gets a thumbs up from me, yeah, on that side of things. So yeah, interesting stuff. Absolutely. So yeah, this is a nicely done beer. This one is quite different. As I say, it has a wee bit of kind of rawness to it, and it's quite a wheaty, bitey leaning New England double IPA for me. But yeah, different from what they've done before. But you can't fault them for that. You always want a brewery to try different things, and this is certainly different from our previous Omnipollo beers. So yeah, have a go at this one and see what you think of it. I'm curious to see what other IPAs they release a little bit later on, of course. But yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things, and I think we've said all we need to say for the tasting section, but on the mouthfeel side of things, what could we say? Yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things, I'd say that it's towards the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. This beer really has almost a creamy, slick kind of thing going on with it, actually, which I can certainly appreciate. But on the hoppy bitterness side of things, I think this one is maybe 40 or 50 IBUs, come to think of it. It really does. The more that you drink of this, the more the kind of bitterness opens up a little bit, which I find quite interesting. There's also a sort of wet, kind of grassy side of things, which I do enjoy as well. I like that about this one for sure. So yeah, nice kind of wet, grassy sort of element to it as well, but yeah, quite a bit of bitterness. Malt base, as we say, there's a bit of grainy rawness underneath it and a bit of wheaty bitiness, but you do get a degree of sweetness out of it as well the more that you drink of it. And there's some nice juicy fruits, and it's got a bit of, you know, tropical pungency to it, but it certainly gives you some softer tropical notes and a wee bit of that more kind of oily, citrusy orange as well. So this is a really interesting one. This is a beer I feel that has tested my palate a little bit, and you know, after 3,000 odd reviews, you want beers that is going to do that. So yeah, it has my approval on that particular point. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. So this one was the Eliphas 8.1% double IPA from Omnipollo. Up in Sundbyberg in Stockholm. So yeah, interesting review this, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it as well. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Omnipollo as well, and we will see about returning to these guys at some point in the near future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Sláinte, skål, and cheers.